Hi guys, we're continuing with our study on Calvinism and specifically the 5 points of Calvinism that are summarized in the acronym TULIP. T standing for total depravity, U standing for unconditional election, L standing for limited atonement, and I standing for irresistible grace, and then finally P standing for perseverance of the saints. So in the last two videos that we did, or last two lessons that we did, we talked about the total depravity and then unconditional election. And today we want to tackle this issue of limited atonement. Now, the issue of limited atonement is the most controversial and the most confusing of all the 5 points. So I think those of you who have heard somebody say that I'm a 5 point Calvinist or I'm a 4 point Calvinist, most probably this is the issue that makes them either a 4.5 or 4 point Calvinist, is the limited atonement, the definition of limited atonement. And so this doctrine is chiefly concerned with the original purpose, the original plan, the original design of God in sending Christ into the world to die on the cross. That is really the concern of this doctrine. What was the plan of God in sending Jesus Christ into the world to die on the cross? And the question is, did God send Christ into the world to die on the cross for everyone, or did God send Christ into the world to die for particular people? That is really the question that is being addressed in limited atonement. And I want to say, as we saw in our previous lesson of unconditional election, that God knew from eternity past who was going to come to faith and who would not come to faith. He knew that the death of Christ had a definite purpose and that it would definitely accomplish that purpose. And definitely that purpose was accomplished. So if we go back to last week's lesson, or the other lesson that we did last time, that there were particular people that God had elected to come to him. The atonement of Jesus on the cross was therefore limited to these people that we called in our last lesson the elect. Let's look at some scriptures here to bring clarity to what we're trying to say. John 10:11. John 10:11 says this: I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd sacrifices his life for the sheep. Or in other version, the good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. John 15:13. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friend. And Jesus did this. He laid down his life for his friends or his sheep. Now, R.C. Sproul says this: the redemption of specific sinner was an eternal plan of God accomplished by the atoning work of Christ. So the redemption of specific sinners was an eternal plan of God accomplished by the atoning work of Christ. That's R.C. Sproul. So here's the deal. Limited atonement is a doctrine that really teaches this, that God's purpose for sending Jesus Christ into the world was to die on the cross, not to save everybody, but to save the elect. And this is a very difficult subject that confuses man, but is very clear in the eyes of God. Because I actually believe in John 3:16, that for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him. So he loved the world. God loves the world. But the purpose of sending Jesus Christ was to die for the elect, a particular people. If we believe in unconditional election, then we have to say that Jesus truly came to die for the elect. God's intent was to provide salvation for those that he had unconditionally elected. So in the eternity past, God had elected some people to become saved. Now, when Jesus came, God now has provided a solution on how those people that were elected will now come to salvation. Now, I believe that Jesus died for somebody, that Jesus died for those who would believe in him. The problem of this doctrine is not in the content of the doctrine itself. It is in the label that we gave it. It is in the language that we use to define it. So whenever we say limited, to some it may suggest that there is some kind of limit in the value of the atonement. But we all believe, obviously, that the atonement is unlimited in its value. But remember, the question that we are wrestling with here is, for whom did Christ intend to die? Did he intend to die for all men indiscriminately, or did he intend to die for a particular people? To which I've been trying to say all through this video that he died for particular people. I believe that Christ died for the elect. Now, Acts 20:28 says that Christ died for his church. Ephesians 5:25, Christ died for his church, the elect, that his atonement was limited in its nature for his sheep, for his church, for his people. So for me, I would agree with many theologians over the century that instead of calling this doctrine maybe limited atonement, we should call it particular redemption or definite atonement. That God sent Christ to die for a particular people, and he came for that particular purpose. And that particular purpose of dying for the elect was accomplished on the cross. Now, I know that's a lot to digest, and maybe the discussions are going to be awesome as we try to wrap our heads around these things. Because some people are going to say, if he only died for the elect, then why do we go out to share the gospel with people? And my answer is because God says, go into the whole world and share the gospel with everyone. That this good news of Jesus coming is going to be shared into the whole world. And unfortunately, the elect don't have an E stamped on their forehead that I can say that guy is an elect and that guy is not. And then conclude that I'm going to go to them and I'm not going to go to these other people. The question that I want you to wrestle with, or that is going to help you make this doctrine clear, is for whom did God send Christ into the world to die for? And as I read the Bible, I'm becoming more and more convinced that Christ came into the world for a particular people, and it's those who are unconditionally elected that now God is going to provide a solution through his son Jesus Christ for them to come into salvation. And that is the doctrine of limited atonement. So let me try to explain here with a diagram here. So we talked about the total depravity. So this is total depravity. So we have a lot of people here. So they are all totally depraved and they're all condemned to eternity apart from God. They're not going to go to God. So man is completely sinful, and apart from God, he cannot save himself. And then we talked about the unconditional election. Okay? And so part of these guys over here, part of them are part of what we call the unconditional election of God, where we talked about Jacob I loved and Esau I hated. So a few of these people are part of the elect. Okay? Now, these elect, they still need to come to God over here. Now, remember, there's still a gap here because they're still sinful. So these guys, even though they are unconditionally elected, they are still part of the sinful people. And so they need to come from this side and to be brought to God. So God wanted them to come and spend eternity with Him, this part of the elect. But then, how are they going to come to God? So God had to provide a solution because there was a gap between them and God. And this solution is what we call the atonement. Okay? So He sent His Son Jesus Christ to provide a way in which these people that He has unconditionally elected would come to Him. Okay? And that is what we are calling atonement. But was this way for these people and these people, or these people only? So there are people that say that this way was for everybody, but only these people are gonna go to God, that are gonna accept it. Now the problem with that doctrine is that these people are elected, but they are sinners. So they need to come to God, and God is gonna bring them to Him through His Son Jesus Christ, which we call the atonement. So since this atonement is only for these people, that is why we are calling it limited. So it is not limited in value, it is limited in scope, that it was providing a way through which these unconditionally elected people can find their way to God. Remember, limited atonement is dealing with the subject of to whom did God send Jesus Christ into the world to die for? Was it for everybody, or was it only for the elect? So I, as a Reformed theologian, believe that it was only for the elect that Jesus was sent to die. So I hope that makes sense. This diagram makes sense a little bit. Thank you for listening. And next, we're going to go into the topic of irresistible grace.